I never imagined that coming home 2 hours early would destroy everything I believed about my family. When I pulled into my driveway that Tuesday afternoon, I thought I was surprising my daughter with her favorite blueberry pie. Instead, I found my entire life packed into cardboard boxes and my own children arguing over who would get my bedroom. I stood there, holding a warm pie in my trembling hands, listening to people I had sacrificed everything for talk about me as if I had already disappeared. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 59 years old, and I've lived in Columbus, Ohio, for nearly 3 decades. Until that afternoon, I believed I had built a family that loved me as fiercely as I loved them. Looking back now, I realized the warning signs had been there all along. I just refused to see them. After my husband, Daniel, passed away from a heart attack 6 years earlier, my world became painfully quiet. Losing him after 34 years of marriage left a hole that never truly healed. Still, I promised myself I wouldn't let grief define the rest of my life. I kept working as a librarian at our neighborhood public library because I loved being surrounded by books and people. Every paycheck wasn't just for me, it was for my children whenever they needed help. My oldest son, Ryan, lived nearby with his wife, Emily, and their 2 children. They often struggled with bills, and I was always there with groceries, babysitting, or a little money tucked inside a birthday card. My younger daughter, Melissa, had recently moved back into my house after her divorce. She said she only needed a few months to get back on her feet. Those few months quietly became almost 2 years. I never complained. I cooked every meal, paid every utility bill, watched her son whenever she worked late, even cleaned up after them because I told myself that's what mothers do. Friends from church occasionally warned me. Margaret, they'd say gently, "You're giving so much that people may start expecting it." I'd smile and defend my children every single time. They've just had a rough few years. They'll remember everything someday. They appreciate me. I believed those words because believing anything else would have broken my heart. That Tuesday started like every ordinary workday. Around 11 that morning, my supervisor announced that a burst water pipe had flooded part of the library basement. The building had to close immediately while emergency repairs began. Everyone was sent home early. I remember smiling to myself. What a wonderful surprise, I thought. I decided to stop by my favorite bakery downtown and buy a fresh blueberry pie because Melissa had mentioned craving one over the weekend. On the drive home, I even imagined us sharing coffee together before my grandson returned from school. For the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely happy. But as soon as I turned onto my street, something felt wrong. Ryan's pickup truck sat in my driveway. Emily's SUV was parked behind it. 2 unfamiliar vehicles were parked along the curb. I frowned. No one had mentioned coming over. Maybe they were planning a surprise birthday dinner. My 60th birthday was only a few weeks away. The thought made me smile. I grabbed the pie carefully and walked toward the front porch. The front door was slightly open. That was unusual. I stepped inside quietly. At first, I heard laughter. Then I heard the unmistakable sound of packing tape being pulled across cardboard boxes. My stomach tightened. As I rounded the corner toward the living room, I froze. Every family photograph that had hung on my walls for years had been taken down. Boxes labeled Mom's clothes. Boxes marked kitchen. My favorite reading chair was wrapped in moving blankets. Melissa stood in the hallway folding my sweaters without the slightest hint of guilt. Ryan carried another box out of my bedroom. Emily sat at my dining table, making handwritten lists. None of them had noticed me. Then I heard Ryan laugh. "Mom won't need all this stuff where she's going." Where she's going? The pie slipped from my hands and hit the hardwood floor with a sickening crash. Blueberry filling splattered across the entryway. Every head turned toward me. The room fell completely silent. Melissa's face lost all its color. Ryan looked like he'd seen a ghost. Emily slowly lowered her clipboard. For several endless seconds, no one spoke. I looked from one familiar face to another, searching desperately for an explanation that made sense. Finally, my voice came out as little more than a whisper. "What are you doing in my house?" For several seconds, no one answered me. The silence felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced. My heart pounded so loudly that I could barely hear my own breathing. I kept looking from Ryan to Melissa, waiting for someone to laugh and tell me this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Instead, Ryan cleared his throat. "Mom, you weren't supposed to be home yet." Those words hurt more than I can describe. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Let us explain." Just, "You weren't supposed to be here." I looked around the room again. My wedding china was wrapped in newspaper. My family photo albums were stacked inside plastic containers. Even the quilt my grandmother had sewn by hand was folded neatly into a moving box. These weren't random things. They were my memories. "My house," I whispered. "Why are my things packed?" Melissa avoided my eyes. Emily quietly gathered her papers as if she wished she could disappear. Ryan finally sighed. "We've been talking about this for months." "For months," I repeated. "Without telling me?" He nodded. "We think it's time for you to move somewhere smaller." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Smaller?" "An apartment," Emily added carefully. "Or maybe one of those senior communities. It would be easier for you." I almost laughed. Easier for who? No one answered. That silence told me everything. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. "The truth is, this house is too much for one person. I've managed it alone for 6 years." "I know, Mom, but Melissa needs stability. Her son needs a permanent home. The kids love this neighborhood. We thought if we combined households, everyone would benefit." "Everyone?" I asked. Ryan hesitated. "Except me?" He looked away. Melissa finally spoke. "Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be." I turned toward her, so quickly she stepped back. "Harder? You live here rent-free. I pay every bill. I watch your son. I cook your meals. And you're telling me not to make this hard." Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't change the facts. "We're just thinking about the future."
"No," I replied quietly.
"You're thinking about my house." The room became painfully still. Emily's clipboard slipped slightly in her hands. Ryan didn't deny it. That silence confirmed my worst fear. They were preparing for my future. They were preparing for theirs. Ryan finally admitted what no one wanted to say aloud. "The mortgage is paid off." I felt like all the air had left my lungs. "There it is." He looked embarrassed but continued. "If you sold the house and moved somewhere smaller, you'd have money left over. Melissa could stay here, and eventually the house would stay in the family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You've already decided who gets my home?" "It just makes sense." I looked at every face in that room. Not one of them had asked what I wanted. Not one of them had included me in the conversation. I wasn't their mother anymore. I was simply an obstacle. Then I noticed a folder lying open on the dining room table. My name was printed across the top. Curious and suddenly terrified, I walked over and picked it up. Inside were brochures for assisted living facilities around Columbus. There were handwritten notes beside several
of them.
Affordable. Close enough for occasional visits. Waiting list only 3 months. Occasional visits. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. They had already planned how often they'd see me. Ryan stepped toward me. "Mom, please don't take this personally." I looked up in disbelief. "Not personally?" He reached for the folder. "We're only trying to help." I pulled it away.
"No."
For the first time that afternoon, my voice became steady. "You were trying to remove me." No one argued. Because they couldn't. Then I noticed something even worse. One of the boxes near the front door was labeled donation. Curious, I opened it. Inside were Daniel's jackets, his Navy photographs, the old coffee mug he'd used every morning for 20 years, even the handmade Father's Day cards our children had made when they were little. My knees nearly gave out. "You were donating your father's things?" Melissa whispered. "We thought they were just taking up space." Taking up space. The man who had built that home with me. The father who had worked overtime to send them to college. Reduced to a box marked donation. I gently picked up Daniel's old jacket and held it against my chest. In that moment, something inside me changed. The tears stopped. The panic disappeared. The desperate need to convince my children to love me simply vanished. I looked at my family with a calmness that surprised even me. Then I asked one simple question. If I hadn't come home early today, when exactly were you planning to tell me I no longer belonged in my own home? No one answered my question. Ryan stared at the floor. Melissa wiped tears from her cheeks, but she still couldn't meet my eyes. Emily quietly closed her clipboard and stepped back. That silence hurt more than any explanation ever could. Finally, Ryan spoke so softly I almost didn't hear him. We were going to tell you tonight. After dinner, Melissa added. I gave a slow, disbelieving nod. So, your plan was to let me cook one last meal in my own kitchen, and then tell me I had to leave. Neither of them denied it. I looked around the room one last time. Every box, every empty wall, every missing photograph reminded me that these people had made a life-changing decision without me. I took a deep breath. Unpack everything. Ryan frowned. What? You heard me. Put every single thing back where it belongs. Mom, let's just calm down.
No, interrupt.
I've been calm for years. I've been patient for years. I've been understanding for years. Today, I'm simply finished. The confidence in my voice caught them off guard. Ryan tried again. We're only thinking about what's practical. I am too, I replied. Practically speaking, this house belongs to me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing he could say. The deed was in my name.
The taxes were paid by me.
Every utility bill came from my checking account. Legally and morally, it was my home. Melissa folded her arms. So, what are you saying? I looked directly at her. I'm saying you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Her eyes widened. What? You heard me. Mom, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious. She began crying. Where am I supposed to go? For years, that question would have broken my heart. This time, I answered calmly. The same way I figured things out after your father died. Ryan stepped forward. You're throwing your own daughter out? I looked at him with tears in my eyes, not tears of weakness, but of acceptance.
No, Ryan.
I'm asking an adult to take responsibility for her own life. He shook his head. This isn't like you. You're right. It wasn't. The old Margaret would have apologized. The old Margaret would have sacrificed herself again. But that woman had disappeared the moment I saw Daniel's belongings inside a donation box. I walked upstairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. For the first time in years, I let myself cry, not because I wanted my children to change, but because I was finally accepting that they already had. An hour later, I came downstairs carrying a small fireproof box. Inside were every important document I owned. The house deed, my savings information, my will. Ryan noticed immediately. What's that for? I smiled sadly. Something I should have protected a long time ago. That evening, after everyone left, the house felt painfully quiet. Boxes still filled the living room because no one had unpacked them. Instead of feeling lonely, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in Daniel's old chair. I looked at our wedding photo and whispered, I finally understand. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted peace. I updated my will. I made it absolutely clear that no one would inherit my home simply because they expected it. I also met with a financial advisor who assured me that I had more than enough savings to enjoy retirement without depending on anyone. For the first time in years, I started making plans for myself instead of everyone else. A road trip through New England in the fall. Volunteering at the library after retirement. Joining the travel club my friends had invited me to countless times. Even taking the painting classes I'd always postponed because someone else needed my time. My phone rang constantly over the next several days. Ryan apologized. Melissa begged. Emily sent long text messages explaining there had been good intentions. Maybe there were. But good intentions don't excuse betrayal. Trust, once broken, isn't repaired by words alone. As I looked around my home a week later, the family photographs were hanging on the walls again. Daniel's jacket was back in the closet. The house finally felt like mine once more. For years, I believed being a good mother meant giving until there was nothing left. I was wrong. Being a good mother should never require giving away your dignity, your security, or your place in the world. Coming home early that Tuesday didn't just expose my family's secret. It saved my future. Because sometimes the greatest act of love isn't sacrificing yourself for the people who take you for granted. Sometimes it's finally choosing yourself.